Hello, thanks for clicking on this video. This is Madeline.
I think Madeline's concerned about who you're talking to.
COVID.
I'm trying not to.
Bad habits. Madeline, be quiet. I'm... What?
Nothing, I just didn't know we were going down this road. Alright.
Yeah. Hey guys.
Hello.
Thanks for clicking on this video. So as you can tell by the title of this, it has been 1 year since Jesse was diagnosed with autism, dyslexia, and ADHD. So we wanted to give you guys kind of an explanation and what our entire first year has been like since Jesse's diagnosis. So if you haven't seen our very first video, it was our finding out our son has autism, dyslexia, and ADHD video. And I will link that at the end of this video if you want to go back and watch it. But basically the shortened version of it was Jesse was 11 years old and we wanted to get him tested for learning disabilities, possibly autism, ADHD, and basically everything that we could think of to get him tested for. That was a, 7-month process total?
Yeah, waiting periods and all that, yeah.
Yeah, I
About
think it was
7 months.
7 months between when we made the first phone call and actually getting him the diagnosis. When we got him diagnosed, the doctor did come back and say that he does have a level 2 moderate autism, but he is high functioning. He also has severe dyslexia, and that was what was really inhibiting him from doing any schoolwork. And then he also has ADHD. All right, so why did we get him tested? We actually had him tested because he was failing all of his classes. He was in 5th grade and basically unable to pass any class. We knew he was smart, we knew he knew the material, but he was unable to complete any assignments. He was unable to complete assignments at home, homework, unable to complete tests without them being read out loud. That was our main concern. We also noticed some social issues with him not being able to make friends or keep friends. And so those were our main concerns, that and his inability to comprehend personal safety the way he should be able to, like more like we call it an actions and consequences. He doesn't understand actions and consequences.
And personal bubbles.
Yeah, yeah. So that was the main reasons that led us to get testing. If you'd like us to do another video on that, just comment down below testing and we will go into a whole in-depth video on everything that was going on with him as to why we felt he needed to be tested. So while we're in the process of getting Jesse tested and waiting to meet with the doctor and going through all that, we were looking up resources in our area, and we were mostly looking up Autism Resources. So we realized very quickly that there were no resources in our area getting help for him or any type of treatment, any type of specialized therapist that dealt with autism. Basically anything wasn't in our area.
Yeah.
So we did actually go out of state to have him tested. We did have him tested at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. So it was a bit of a trip to go back and forth up there for the testing and back up there for the initial consultation to meet with the doctor to see if he needed testing. But that didn't bother us. We were fine with driving up here for a day and back. That didn't bother us to go out of state for testing. It was about a 2.5 hour drive one way, which was totally worth it to get an accurate diagnosis, potential resources, and some treatment. So as soon as we did get the diagnosis of autism, dyslexia, and ADHD, we actually had to switch gears a little bit, because while we were waiting on the testing to happen, we were actually looking up a whole bunch of resources for autism. But his primary diagnosis was actually the severe dyslexia. So we had looked up potential schools for autism, but we had to switch gears really quickly and start looking up schools for dyslexia. Long story short, we went through, well, coming up with a list for schools for dyslexia was not easy.
No.
No, it was really hard. We ended up making a list of our top 15 schools that was all the way from the New England area down to Florida, all the way out to Kansas. We looked at schools in California.
Yeah.
We looked literally all over the United States to try to find somewhere for him to go. After being rejected from 15 dyslexia schools that literally would not even meet with Jesse because he had an autism diagnosis, we had to then switch gears back and go back to look at autism schools. So it was quite a process of being rejected from 15 different dyslexia schools that literally wouldn't meet with your son just because he had an autism diagnosis in his chart.
Yeah.
It was really upsetting then.
Yeah.
That was hard. We're literally willing to move across the United States to get him the services that he needed, and they won't even consider him because of a diagnosis like that. Was a really rough way to jump in the autism pool. So after we switched gears to looking at autism schools, we had to then find autism schools that also had a dyslexia specialist on campus. And then again, we looked across the New England area all the way down to Florida. Luckily for us, because Jesse was high functioning, the autism schools were actually really interested in him. So we did have a lot of luck talking to them. We narrowed it down to 2 schools, one in Ohio, one in South Carolina, and we actually have 2 different videos on our process of figuring out which school would be better for Jesse, and then the whole process of viewing the schools, finding jobs in those areas, housing those areas, and those time frames actually ended up overlapping because of the, was that a hurricane? Came through and delayed our visit of the school in South Carolina. So we actually had a 5-week span of Alan going ahead and moving up to Columbus, not knowing which school we were going to go to, and then deciding which school we were going to go to the day before you moved up here, and then getting a house while we were up here. You were up here and I was back home with the kids, and it was stressful, to say the least. And yeah, if you ever want to see those videos, we have them saved on there so you can go back through and watch them. And we talk about what went into our decision factors as to the school in Ohio versus the school in South Carolina, and the differences and what we thought would be best for Jesse. This was a whole new ballgame for us. We started, well, you listened a lot. I researched a lot. I did a lot of research on dyslexia and autism and figuring out where Jesse fit in both of those categories. And it's not extremely common for kids with autism to also have dyslexia. ADHD is perfectly normal to fit in there, but it was hard to navigate something that I couldn't research kids with autism and dyslexia. I had to research them both individually and then figure out the middle ground between the two as to what would work in theory for Jesse, because we didn't know. So we ended up renting a house up here in Ohio. Alan already had his job up here. Kids and I moved up here. We sold our house back in West Virginia. It was a transition going from a very small community to a large city.
Yeah.
It wasn't as bad as I thought, though.
No.
I was impressed, though. I was really fearful of how that was gonna go, but it did fine. And then we had to take into account that we have 2 children. We can't just do what's best for one child and not the other child. So we had to consider Olivia in all of this, but still get the best resources possible for Jesse. It was exhausting, to say the least, to try to figure out all of these things at one time as soon as possible. And after we moved up here, when we moved up here and people find out you're new, they're like, oh, did you move up here for work? And we're like, no, we actually moved up here for our son's schooling so he could get resources that we needed. And they're like, oh, that's so nice that you can do that. And I think they mean it with the best of intentions. I think they're just trying to be polite. But I'm like, that was not an easy thing to happen. That wasn't just something like, we're just gonna, go up there and it'll be fine. It'll all work out. Like, we worked really hard to make this happen for Jesse and for our family. We put in, I don't even know how many hours.
Ashley worked harder than I did.
Well, you worked hard too. You agreed to it. You're like, okay, this is what we have to do. This is what we're going to do. It's not like you put up a fight like, I'm comfy in my hometown with my family and friends and,
Yeah, but you did all the research.
But yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy. And I think people just hear the end result of we moved up here to better him, and they applaud us for that, and they're very gracious of good for you guys, awesome parenting, but it wasn't really a choice for us. It was, this is what's best for our kid, and this is what we're going to make happen. The actual process of making that happen was long and stressful and hard, and it was one hiccup after another, after a huge bump in the road, but it was just determination.
Yeah.
And knowing that this is what we have to do to give your child the best chance, and I don't see any other way around it. You just make it work. The schooling up here has made a huge difference so far in his education. He went from a kid who was literally getting straight F's to A's and B's and 1 C. He's starting to feel a little more confident in his work and like completing his work and stuff, because he has an above average IQ, but because he couldn't complete the work, he just thought he was dumb. He didn't think he could do it. And we're working on building that confidence back up, that he is smart and he can do this and he can complete these assignments and he has the ability to do this. And I think it's increased a little bit.
I think so, yeah.
I think he's starting to see an increase enough to where he's starting to change a little bit, but we're still a long ways from where we need to be with that. Friend-wise, he's made some friends. He's feeling a little better about that, but we're still have a long way to go down that road.
Yeah.
He still definitely needs some more socialization, and we actually just registered for some therapy to work on that. And I feel bad because it's been a year later, but it's been one heck of a year of getting everything else together to where that was at the bottom of the totem pole. Dyslexia wise, I think he was improving, but with the whole pandemic thing happening in the middle of all this and the online learning, I don't feel like that's really improved very much.
Yeah.
So when we're able to actually work with an individual dyslexia tutor, we're going to try to make that happen too, but that's just going to all depend on how this COVID-19 thing goes. I think as his parents, we've came a long way since when we first got him diagnosed till now. When he first got him diagnosed, I was scared. That was definitely, I was scared for him because I didn't know what that meant for him. And now that I've, done a lot of research, and I've actually been able to talk to other parents on like social media groups and stuff like that, I haven't got to actually interact with a lot of the parents yet.
Wow.
COVID. But online has helped a lot. And so hearing other people's stories and encouragement and their struggles has made us feel a lot better. And it's just, the unknown was so scary, and not knowing how it's going to affect him was horrible as a parent. You just want the best for your kids. I think that first 6 months of figuring out what this meant for him and what we needed to do and making that happen was the worst.
Yeah.
And now that we're beyond that and we can start working on, one at a time, priority wise, and getting stuff to be easier for him. So if you're watching this because you're waiting to get your child diagnosed, or you just had your child diagnosed and you're frantically looking for any type of autism families on YouTube, which is what I did, Just know that the first year is confusing and it's stressful, but it's not the end of the world, and it does get better. And now that you at least have that diagnosis, you can start working on improving and getting the help that is needed.
It gets easier the farther you go into it.
Yeah.
And the most important thing is to have a good support system.
Oh, that is a good point. That's definitely important, whether it comes in the form of a spouse or a relative or a friend or just a really awesome person on the internet. Somebody that you can at least talk to about it, because I know not everybody has the family support system like other people, and that's stressful when you don't have somebody else to talk to about that. So if you ever need somebody to reach out to, just comment. I'd be happy to talk to you.
Yeah.
I think what surprised me the most was the way the autism diagnosis affected every other aspect of our lives in ways that I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, from worrying about whether Olivia had autism, worrying about if we have more children, will they have autism? I didn't plan on one of Jesse's diagnoses playing in a factor on whether or not we have more children, but it does. And but
Nothing, I just didn't know we were going down this road. All right.
well, doesn't it?
I mean, yeah, it does.
Reality of it, it does. Whether
Yeah.
you want it to or not, it does, good or bad. I think my fear was Jesse being treated differently with this diagnosis, whether or not it be family or friends or strangers or teachers.
Yeah.
That was my number one fear, and so far it hasn't been a major issue, which is the biggest relief for me of everything.
Yeah, it hasn't been an issue.
Yeah.
Most people, honestly, after spending some time around Jesse, and then we tell them that he has autism, can't believe it. So
Yeah.
I think that plays a major factor in how.
Most people, even after being around him at a pizza party or something like that, they were surprised. And I mean, whether or not you consider that a good thing or a bad thing, I know some people see it as a compliment when they can't tell that their child is different from other people, and then other people in the autism community find it as an insult because they're like, just because I can hide it and it's not visible to you doesn't mean that there's not issues. The one thing we've learned about the autism community are there are two sides for every opinion.
Yeah.
Even though this year has been scary and stressful and not what we expected, it's also been helpful because we can work towards getting Jesse the resources that we need. So it's been quite a ride, but we don't give up, and we are looking forward to how much he's going to improve over the next year. Thank you guys so much for staying with us, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.
Click on this video. Will you please click on this video? Come on, push it. Can you please subscribe? Can you please push that subscribe button? Or for the other video, you're gonna press this button. Go on, click this button, or this button, or this button. Well, mostly this button, but these two buttons I